I'm Father Wayne Cavalier. I'm the director of the Kangar Institute for Ministry Development. We work for the education of people in underserved places and underserved communities to ensure that they have the leadership formation that they need to be excellent leaders in their own communities. Sister Dorothy Stang was a sister of Notre Dame de Namur. She, at one point in her life, chose to be in solidarity with poor farmers in the Amazon forest of Brazil at a time when many of the corporations were moving in to take care of their interests and were squeezing out the poor farmers who lived there. So she basically gave her life to be present with them, to live with them, to advocate for their rights and their lives and livelihood in the Amazon forest. And I should add, eventually she was martyred for her stance with the poor farmers of the Amazon. She is the blood sister of Bill Murray, the Oscar-nominated actor, and she's quite an actor herself. And she's done, she does two things like this. She does a couple of one-woman shows, and I've seen her perform the show she does with Catherine of Siena, and she really embodies the person of Catherine of Siena in that. And we're looking forward to her presentation, her one-woman play on Dorothy Stang as well. And for the opportunity to really get to know who Dorothy Stang was, what were her passions, what drove her to do what she did, and to stand up for these farmers. Well, there are a couple of things. One thing is to know this person, Sister Dorothy Stang, who was so committed to what she believed was right, and the importance of following what's right and putting yourself on the line for what is right and what is good, and for others, to care about others. But also in light of Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si, that we're able to draw connections between what Sister Dorothy Stang saw and acted on in her own life, and our own call to be responsible citizens of the earth, people who care for creation, as Pope Francis calls us to be, and also to be aware of the disproportionate impact of our ecological sins on the poor, such as the poor farmers that Sister Dorothy worked with. So I hope that we not only get to know who this person was, but also have a clearer sense of our own responsibility for the impact of what we do on the environment and how it affects those who don't have as much say as many of us do in what happens to the environment. Well, I think the groups that are collaborating together to bring this performance about, the Kangar Institute and our concern for faith formation for adults especially, and Oblate School of Theology continuing education has a similar concern. So I think anyone interested in deepening their understanding of their own faith would benefit from this. But also the Institute for the Study of Contemporary Spirituality here at Oblate School of Theology and the University of the Incarnate Word Mission and Ministry, along with the rest of us, have a concern for helping people to really think and reflect about the message that Pope Francis has given us in Laudato Si, and the opportunity to really kind of bring together what will be a wonderful presentation by Sister Murray and a very different kind of reflection on the same thing by Pope Francis, and understand how that calls us to live out those values in our own lives. Well, what I like about Sister Dorothy Stang is that what she did with such conviction and giving her life for this is not an obvious or a simple gospel connection. She really thought through the implications of the gospel for the lives of people and how the interactions of their lives with what's going on in a broader society have an impact. And simply the call to love your neighbor brought her to understand that for her to be in solidarity with people who were suffering, who were being squeezed out of their livelihood, was an act of love that Jesus calls us to. But the main thing, I think, is you begin with the recognition, as you said, you begin with the recognition that we follow one who gave himself completely out of the conviction that God's love is the most important thing in the world, literally. And that was worth giving his life for. So ultimately, we can say God's love is worth giving one's life for. And so I think, one, we shouldn't expect anything less if we're going to follow Jesus. So it's a great challenge to us. But it doesn't mean that each one of us has to die in the same way. We don't have to face rifles in the rainforest. You know, each day to take a stand with the poor, to care for our environment, are acts that sometimes involve sacrifice. And I think that's what it means for us, is that to recognize what's most important and to take a stand for that. I think ultimately is the message of Sister Dorothy Stang and of Jesus Christ. Well, in Christian tradition, people who are martyred for their faith are automatically considered saints. Martyrs are saints. And Sister Dorothy Stang's one motivation was the gospel, to take a stand out of love for her neighbors with the poor farmers of the Brazilian rainforest and of the Amazon. And so it seems like canonization would simply be a recognition of what is already a fact, that she gave her life for the sake of others, according to our gospel. The greatest thing one can do is lay down one's life for another, and that in itself means that she is a saint. She chose that path as a response to her faith. Certainly, she could be the patron saint of poor farmers. She could be the patron saint of those who stand in solidarity with the poor. She could be the patron saint of first world persons who take a stance in solidarity with those who have less than we do, which is a lot of people. And I think, following Laudato Si, it would be appropriate to make her the patron saint of environmental evangelism. Yeah, that's a good phrase. Environmental evangelism. For me, what needs to be considered in her life is the courage of a single woman, along with her community, of course, but a woman. She was by herself. I mean, she had some of the other people with her, but basically confronting these killers alone, and the courage she had, that tells me that from beginning to the very end, literally, she stood on the Bible, she stood on the Word of God, and she embodied that Word of God as Christ did. And so she's a true witness. In the best sense, the word martyr means witness. And so she gave her life witnessing to the fact that the Word of God is more powerful than the guns that she was facing down on that dirt road in the forest. And I think all of us can draw strength and encouragement from that witness, that there's nothing that can overcome the love of God for each of us. So I hope that many people will come both to hear and see the performance of Sister Nancy Murray, of the life of Sister Dorothy Stang, whose great witness to our faith and to the truth of our responsibility for all of creation. And also to engage in conversation about the connections and this will be a facilitated conversation by Sister Linda Gibler, who has studied the impact of the gospel on the environment, the connections between the gospel and the environment. And so she's going to help us to draw connections between the witness of Sister Dorothy Stang as portrayed by Sister Nancy and the encyclical by Pope Francis, Laudato Si, that calls us all to environmental responsibility. The event will take place at the Whitley Theological Center here at Oblate School of Theology on Thursday, March 3rd from 7 to 9:30. The cost is $30 per person, $15 for students, and we hope that everyone will come. www.rootedinlove.eventgrid.com